So let's say we have our habits, we've built our structures. There's something still missing, isn't there? How can we introduce a level of spontaneity to all this? How do we do what we want? We live in a world that works extra hard to take away all sources of dopamine from you. How do we take that back? I was talking to someone very close to me recently, and they told me they can't stand how small their lives have become. See if this sounds familiar to you. You wake up, go to work, go to the grocery store, you go home, you cook dinner, order takeout, you watch some trash TV, and then you go to sleep. You wake up the next morning and you do it all over again. And that's constricting. And if you have kids, it's even worse. Like, where's the time to paint a picture? Where's the time to hang out with a friend? Where is the time for the rest of life? And so, what do we even do, right? How do we make life bigger? Well, first off, we have to understand that this takes an enormous amount of energy, even when you know what you're doing. But the idea here is to prevent two things. First, the burnout that comes from being less you, day in and day out. Masking as someone else erodes you. It takes work, takes energy. Burnout is not far behind. And number two, you have to be careful not to fall into the grass is always greener problem. See, no matter where you are in life, the mistakes you've made and the decisions you've taken, somewhere in an alternate universe, there is a you with the exact opposite decisions and luck who is also feeling disconnected and despondent. And sure, that means, and this is what I'm saying, is that in every timeline, in every universe, you're sitting somewhere staring at the window thinking your life could have turned out differently, because the one common factor between those universes is your wiring, your brain, and how it continues to yell at you, telling you you chose poorly except you didn't. The only thing you chose poorly is how to deal with the cards you do have. Here, let me show you my cards. In 2017, I went to Bilbao on a whim. Right when my life had started changing forever, I took a trip to Bilbao. I wanted to go on a long hike. That's all. I wanted to walk to a pretty place. And while looking around on Google, I found this one place called San Juan de Gaztelugatxe. Now, San Juan de Gaztelugatxe is a small islet in the middle of the sea, just north of Bilbao, and there's a tiny chapel on top of it. It's said that if you ring its bell 3 times, you can ask for a wish. I got mine, but that's a story for another time. Anyway, the point is my life was about to change, and I decided I wanted to do something different, something spontaneous. So I chose a place, grabbed a plane, spent 3 nights in Bilbao. I had so much fun, and I took some great pictures. I have some great memories from my little weekend in Bilbao, and it was amazing, and it helped mark the end of a chapter of my life. But anyways, after I came back, I had to learn how to survive mentally, mostly, and financially, secondly. So I had to create habits and structures, and these habits and structures needed to be a little inflexible. The way my brain works, if I give it too much leeway, I'll end up using downtime for doom scrolling on TikTok, and that's going to clinically depress me in like 2 days. So that inflexibility doesn't really leave room for other Bilbaos. I have to survive, I have to walk my dog, I have to feed both of us healthily, because for some reason I want to keep living despite my better judgment. But there are whims, there are whispers of things I want to do. They cross my mind every so often, like, skippable ads in my brain. And I go like, I would very much like to do that. Whims. So, when I went to Bilbao, that was a whim. So I've been trying to catch those whims, listen to them, and figure out which ones I can actually do, and which ones will land me on the grass is greener problem. Like, I'd love to go to Bilbao again, but I can't afford it. I would love to be able to buy a globe of the earth and just point at a place and fly there every weekend. Take my dog, and explore a new village somewhere. But that's just not where I am. I can't do that. My whims can be pricey. Sometimes I want to do a bunch of things in the course of the day, trips or going to Disneyland or buying music gear, clothes. I can't afford any of it. So I've had to narrow budget my scope. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you followed this channel for a while, you'll remember that I live down the street from a 12th century castle, the Château de Vincennes. And one of the things that I do like to do every so often is I like to walk over to the castle. And there's an ice cream store a couple of blocks away from it. And I buy 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream and I walk back home. It's a charging little outing, which is both cheap and close by. And I can do that whenever I want. And I have to remember, there were times when I prayed for things like these. And I am living in the grass is greener right now compared to who I was 10 years ago. Like, this is it. This is the greener grass. I am doing what I always wanted. Eating ice cream. There are things a man can do and things a man can't do. I heard that in Pirates of the Caribbean years ago, and I thought it was some screenwriter's nonsensical attempt at being deep. But thinking about it a little more, it made so much sense to me. Like, listen, do you want to increase the size of your life? Well, ask yourself, what can you do? Because you can sit there and be mad at the things that you can't do, or you can look at the things you can do and say, oh yeah, that will scratch an itch. So while you continue to build your life, try not to get hung up on what you can't do. There's always going to be a path to that thing, the thing you want to do. But maybe you can't get there right now. So let's figure out what the next step is, what your life actually allows for, and do that. See, you can complain about your current salary, but you can't make more unless you switch jobs or change your attitude at work. You can double text your crush, but you can't force them to like you. You can eat ice cream. You just can't do it in the middle of spring in Florence. It's just a lot of money. Yet. And while you build a life for yourself, you can make the choice to do what feels good. And if you can't, there's always a lesson to be learned. You'll never walk away empty-handed. Things you can't do will always teach you something, either the why or the why not. So you can learn from it. Now, more importantly, let's be pragmatic about this. What I want you to understand is that our habits, our systems will help us function in this world, and they're critical. And for some of us, that inflexibility is actually necessary for these things to work. But these systems need to have downtime. You need to allow for slots of time, blocks of time, where you're not doing any actual work. Like, actually add these events to your calendar, 2, maybe 4 hours of unscheduled time slots where you can either listen to your whims or pull out a list of old whims that you can actually do. Or use that time to plan ahead, to plan a trip, to plan dinner with a friend. But most of all, and especially important, you have to remember the grass is not always greener. The thing you can't do today, no big deal. There are things you can actually do, so do those. Don't get hung up in the what ifs of your life. Living in the present means not having to contend with a life that isn't actually happening, a life that isn't real, what a man can't do. The grass isn't greener on the other side, it's just grass. All right, homework for the week. What I want you to do is I want you to make a list. Doesn't matter where. Notebook, Google Sheets, I don't care. Make a list of things you want to do, whims you've had before, even those you had when you were a little kid. In my case, that's publish comic book. Then on the side, make a note of which ones you can do and which ones you can't. Now, from the things you can do, schedule one this month. Learn a new song on the piano, swim in a lake somewhere, teach your kids how to sing, try that new restaurant. There's always things we can do. Let's not pin our mental well-being on the things we can't. See, I can't go to Bilbao again yet, but I can get some ice cream across the drawbridge of a medieval castle in the outskirts of Paris. I dreamed of times like these. And now look at me, living the dream. Talk to you soon.